Fiona Adaran had spent her entire life believing the world existed to obey her. At 5'10", elegant and striking, she commanded attention wherever she went. Her caramel skin glowed beneath the sun, her long polished hair framed a face made for luxury campaigns, and her cold brown eyes could dismiss a person before they finished speaking. She had beauty, wealth, and the protection of one of the most powerful men in the country. Her father, Chief Matthew Adaran, was a self-made industrial billionaire who adored his only daughter so completely that he never learned how to deny her. When Fiona wanted one car, he bought 3. When she mentioned traveling, a private jet appeared. When she became bored, he handed her another company to claim without expecting her to build it. Every gift made Fiona more entitled. Every unchecked demand convinced her that money could erase consequences. People admired her from a distance, envied her lifestyle, and feared the cruelty behind her perfect smile. On a blistering morning, her black Mercedes stopped outside an exclusive jewelry boutique. Fiona stepped onto the pavement in a fitted white designer dress, diamond earrings, and oversized sunglasses that hid her expression from everyone around her. The city moved frantically, with horns blaring and pedestrians pushing through the heat, but Fiona walked as though the street belonged to her. Then an elderly man wandered into her path. He was thin, gray-haired, and unsteady on his feet. He appeared confused and exhausted, barely noticing how close he had come to her. Fiona stopped. What she did next would humiliate him in front of the entire street and trigger a chain of events that would strip away her wealth, expose her true character, and force the billionaire's daughter to experience the kind of suffering she had always ignored. His clothes were worn, the kind that suggested a difficult life. He reached out, perhaps looking for balance, or simply unaware of her presence. To Fiona, it didn't matter. His fingers brushed against her arm by accident. She froze, not from fear, but outrage. Her voice sliced through the air. "What is wrong with you?" Before the man could apologize or even understand what he had done, Fiona's hand swung sharply across his cheek. The sound echoed. It was not a gentle slap. It was the kind designed to humiliate, not discipline. The old man staggered backward, hand pressed to his face, eyes widening with confusion and hurt. For a moment, the street stilled. People stopped mid-conversation. Even the traffic seemed to hesitate. A few witnesses exchanged glances, their expressions shifting between shock and hesitation. Everyone recognized Fiona. Everyone knew her temper, and no one dared intervene. Fiona pointed at the man with cold disgust. "Stay away from me. People like you have no business being this close." She didn't wait for a response. She turned on her heel and walked into the jewelry store. Her posture tall, her confidence unshaken, as if slapping a 70-year-old man was not an act of cruelty, but her right. Inside the boutique, the staff greeted her with strange smiles. They had seen her temper before. They knew she could be pleasant when she wanted something and vicious the moment anything displeased her. Today she was in a good mood, humming softly as she inspected a new diamond bracelet. But outside, the old man remained where he stood, silent, steadying himself. He lowered his hand slowly from his cheek. The redness from the slap was visible. His eyes, calm, thoughtful, unexpectedly intelligent, lingered on the store entrance long after Fiona disappeared inside. His name was Stephen Alide, and he was not what Fiona thought. Stephen was one of the wealthiest men in the country, a discreet billionaire whose empire stretched across real estate, energy, and global investments. His power was quiet, his influence deep, but he was nothing like men who flaunted their wealth. His suits were usually simple, his cars were unbranded, and he despised superficiality with a passion forged from a lifetime of pain. He had grown up watching his mother leave his father for a wealthier man. He remembered his father's devastated expression. The night he collapsed from a fatal heart attack when the truth came out. Stephen had been 14, helpless, and traumatized. He swore that day to build a life where heartbreak could never find him again. He became guarded, calculating, unwilling to trust easily. And because of that vow, Stephen developed a habit. Sometimes he disguised himself as an ordinary man, a gardener, a delivery worker, even a homeless stranger, to observe the world without the filter of wealth. He believed you only saw people's true selves when they had nothing to gain from pleasing you. That morning, he had chosen to disguise himself as an elderly vagrant, sitting quietly near the jewelry boutique while conducting mental notes for a charity project. It was meant to be an anonymous day, a quiet one, a simple observation, until Fiona's hand connected with his face. He felt no anger. Not yet. What he felt was fascination. The way she reacted, the violence behind such a small mistake, the entitlement in her voice, all of it hinted at something deeper. That was not the behavior of a woman who simply had a bad day. It was the behavior of someone whose heart had been allowed to rot unchecked. Stephen watched her walk out of the store minutes later, wearing her new bracelet and a triumphant smile. She climbed back into her Mercedes, snapping at her driver to hurry because she had lunch reservations. She didn't look back once. Stephen did. He watched the car pull away, watched the arrogance in the way she tilted her chin, and for the first time in a long time, he felt something stir. Not attraction, not anger, but the cold spark of a mystery unraveling. He didn't know her name yet. He didn't know her reputation. He didn't know that she had already marked him as her next target. He only knew one thing. A woman who could slap an old man without remorse was a woman worth observing. Later that week, Stephen boarded a private flight for a brief holiday, a rare escape from work. He expected nothing unusual. He expected peace. What he did not expect was a beautiful young woman in simple clothing approaching him with polite, disarming warmth. A woman who introduced herself as Fiona. A woman who claimed their meeting was a coincidence. He smiled politely, unaware that she had trailed him for months. He listened to her soft voice, unaware she had studied him like a final exam. He offered her a handshake, unaware she had orchestrated the entire encounter like a seasoned hunter tracking prey. But that story belonged to another chapter. For now, the universe had simply drawn its battle lines. The ruthless beauty, the wounded billionaire, the slap that would rewrite both their lives. And somewhere, buried beneath the chaos of that moment, fate began to crack open. The airport was alive with its usual symphony of rolling suitcases, soft announcements, and travelers weaving through one another with practiced urgency. But for Fiona, this was not an ordinary travel day. She wasn't here because she loved the beach. She wasn't craving a vacation. She was here for him. The man she intended to marry. The man whose life she planned to break open piece by piece until every ounce of his wealth flowed into her hands. Stephen Alameda, a name she had memorized months before. A routine she had studied. A man whose guarded heart she intended to infiltrate the same way she had infiltrated others, through carefully planned coincidences. She walked confidently through the terminal in a plain dress. Nothing flashy, nothing that would hint at her true lifestyle. Her hair was pulled into a simple ponytail, and her makeup was light, almost natural. She looked like an ordinary young woman on a modest trip, the exact type Stephen was rumored to prefer. "Are you sure he's on this flight?" Her friend Maya whispered beside her, pretending to scroll through her phone. Maya had always been Fiona's accomplice, the one who carried out research, secured contacts, and found out the secrets of every wealthy man Fiona had targeted. Fiona didn't look at her. She maintained her calm, gentle expression as she checked her boarding pass. "He booked the seat 2 days ago. I told you I follow his assistant online." The moment they posted that inspirational quote with an airplane emoji, I knew. Maya smirked. "You are unbelievable." "No," Fiona said softly. "I am unstoppable." They approached the boarding gate. Fiona's heart didn't race. She never allowed emotion to interrupt her control. But there was a certain sharpness in her gaze, the look of a predator right before impact. A few rows ahead, seated with a paperback novel, was the man himself, Stephen. He wore a simple navy blue sweater and dark trousers. Nothing extravagant, nothing that screamed money. His watch was the only giveaway, understated but undeniably expensive. He didn't try to draw attention. He didn't need to. His presence alone carried the quiet confidence of a man who had survived storms too loud to brag about. Fiona placed a hand over her chest briefly, a rehearsed gesture of flustered recognition, and whispered, "Oh my, he's here." Maya nudged her subtly. "Showtime." But before Fiona could move toward him, Maya walked off, blending into the crowd, her part in the script complete. Fiona took a breath and began the act she had perfected. The approachable stranger, she walked toward Stephen's row, finding surprise, and spoke in a warm, timid tone she never used in real life. "Sorry, is this seat 22? She asked him, even though her boarding pass clearly read 24. Stephen looked up, polite and attentive. "You're 1 row off. 22 is just behind you." She laughed softly, a delicate, harmless sound. "I always mix up numbers on flights. Thank you." That was the first brush, the first seed. She moved toward her own seat but made sure to glance back at him once. A brief, thoughtful look that suggested admiration but not dependence. Subtle, understated, exactly the kind of look that made men curious. Minutes later, the flight attendants completed their checks and the aircraft lifted off the ground. The world below shrank, turning into a blur of clouds and distance. The moment they were stable in the air, Fiona made her move. She stood, pretending to retrieve something from the overhead compartment, and just as she planned, her bag slipped from her grip, landing near Stephen's feet. "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry," she exclaimed softly, leaning forward as he instinctively bent to pick it up. "It's all right," he said, handing her the bag. His eyes met hers, and for the first time they truly took in her face. The simple clothes, the warm demeanor, the gentle embarrassment. "Thank you," she said, her voice soft, almost shy. "You're very kind." Most men melted at that tone. Most men immediately saw innocence, humility, kindness. Stephen didn't melt, but he noticed her, and noticing was enough. She returned to her seat. But the tiny exchange created a bridge, a place where she could cross again later. She knew how these things worked. Connections didn't need fireworks. They needed repetition and familiarity. The human brain trusted what it saw often. Half an hour later, the opportunity came when she walked toward the restroom and saw him standing near the aisle, waiting his turn. She adjusted her expression instantly, surprised, delighted, a bit embarrassed. "Oh, hello again," she said with a soft smile. He smiled back politely. "Hello. I'm not bothering you, am I?" "Not at all." She reached out her hand. "I'm Fiona." He shook it. "Stephen." "Nice to meet you," she said, pretending to struggle with the name. "Stephen Illumity, right? I think I've seen you at a charity gala before." A lie. She had never been invited to his galas, but she had memorized pictures from every event he attended. He nodded. "Possibly. I attend a few here and there. I admire the work you do," she said, her tone bright but not overly eager. "It's refreshing to meet someone who uses wealth for good things." He chuckled gently. "Well, I try." His humility impressed her, not emotionally, but strategically. Humble men were easier to control than arrogant ones. They underestimated danger. They fell in love with. When the restroom became available, she stepped aside. "You first." "I don't mind." "Waiting." "Are you sure?" he asked. She nodded graciously. And that moment, that polite gesture was her hook. People always remembered kindness, even when it was fake. When the plane landed hours later, Fiona walked slowly, giving him time to catch up to her near the baggage carousel. Sure enough, he approached her with a warm smile. "Safe travels, Fiona." She smiled shilly. "You too, Stephen." She walked out, pretending not to look back, but she watched him through her reflection in the airport glass. He turned once, just once. But that was all she needed. Fiona glided into her hotel suite later, her expression instantly shifting from gentle innocence to cold calculation. Maya was waiting inside, stretched across the sofa with a bag of snacks. So Maya demanded, "Tell me everything." Fiona dropped her simple purse and exhaled triumphantly. He took the bait. Maya sat up already. "Oh, please," Fiona scoffed. It was too easy. He didn't flirt or anything, but he noticed me. And once a man like that notices you, he keeps noticing. She walked to the mirror and removed her ponytail, letting her full hair cascade freely. The soft, humble girl vanished, replaced by the real Fiona. Sharp, confident, hungry. Maya grinned. "You're unbelievable," Fiona admired her own reflection. "No," she said slowly. "I'm patient, and I always get what I want." But at that exact moment, miles away, Stephen stood outside his beachfront suite, with the soft sea breeze brushing against his face. He stared at the ocean, trying to shake off a strange feeling, a faint prickle in the back of his mind. He had been polite to Fiona. He had found her pleasant. But something about her smile, something about her perfect coincidences, something about the softness she displayed felt practiced. He couldn't explain why. He couldn't articulate the suspicion, but after a lifetime of betrayal, his instincts always whispered before his mind caught up. Still, he pushed the feeling aside. She seemed sweet. She seemed harmless. She seemed genuine enough. He had no idea that the woman he met on that flight was the same woman who slapped him on the street days before. The same woman who looked down on anyone with less power. The same woman who had mastered the art of deception the way some mastered languages. He didn't know. Not yet. But fate had already begun untying the strings holding their lives apart. The restaurant was quiet, intentionally so. It was the kind of place designed for whispered conversations and soft candlelight. Every table was spaced generously apart, giving diners the illusion of privacy. A soft classical melody drifted through the air, wrapping the room in a warmth that was almost intimate. Fiona sat alone at the table Stephen had reserved, her posture flawless, every move deliberate. Her dress was a pale, beige, elegant but modest, chosen specifically to highlight a personality she did not possess. The real Fiona preferred diamonds that glimmered like frost and gowns that demanded attention. Tonight she needed subtlety. Tonight she needed to become the woman Stephen believed he wanted. Gentle, considerate, down to earth. She glanced at her reflection in the window. Soft curls framed her face, falling loosely around her shoulders. Her makeup was delicate, barely there. Her lips held a soft rose tint, her features softened to appear kind rather than commanding. She was satisfied. Men always fell for the version of her she crafted for them. Stephen would be no different. The door opened and Stephen stepped inside. He was dressed in a simple dark blazer with a crisp white shirt underneath. Nothing extravagant, nothing flashy. It was the kind of outfit worn by someone who didn't need clothes to announce his wealth. When he saw her, his expression warmed, and he walked toward her table with a gentle smile. "You look lovely," he said when he reached her, pulling out the chair opposite hers. "Thank you," she replied with a soft, almost shy smile. "You look very handsome," they sat. And for a moment silence stretched between them like a fragile thread. But it wasn't uncomfortable. It was simply the quiet pause of two people who were still learning each other. Stephen spoke first. "I'm glad you agreed to this," he said. "I wasn't sure if you would." She lowered her gaze modestly. "I enjoy talking to you. You seem sincere." That single word was deliberate. Men like Stephen valued sincerity, often to their own detriment. He smiled faintly, almost embarrassed. "I try." A waiter approached, placing menus in front of them, but neither reached for one yet. They were too focused on one another, or at least Stephen was. Fiona maintained the appearance of attentiveness while her mind raced through calculated moves. She needed him to feel safe. She needed him to lean forward, not away. So Stephen began. "What do you do for work?" A question she had prepared for extensively. "I run a small interior design studio," she said, folding her hands gracefully on the table. "It's nothing major. I work from home most days. I enjoy creating peaceful spaces." She kept her smile humble, her tone warm. She did not mention the high-rise penthouse she lived in, the designer pieces she owned, or the fact that she didn't actually design anything. She hired people to do that and stamped her name on the work. "That sounds fulfilling," Stephen said sincerely. "It is," she lied gently. "What about you? Is your work stressful?" He chuckled softly. "Sometimes, but it keeps me grounded." Grounded? The kind of word Fiona despised, but she nodded as though it meant the world to her. The conversation drifted easily after that, at least on Stephen's side. He asked about her hobbies, her dreams, her thoughts about travel. She responded with carefully crafted answers she had practiced many times. She appeared simple, sweet, compassionate. She laughed at his jokes just long enough to seem charmed. She listened with intensity that appeared genuine. She even leaned in slightly when he spoke. A small gesture of vulnerability. Every detail was calculated. Every smile intentional, but Stephen didn't notice. Not yet. He saw only what she allowed him to see. Dinner was served, and they ate slowly, their conversation ebbing and flowing with the same smooth rhythm as the distant music. About an hour into the date, something unexpected happened. A waiter, young, trembling, clearly inexperienced, approached their table with a tray of beverages. His hands shook, and in one horrifying moment, the glass tipped. Cold water splashed across Fiona's dress, dripping down her lap and staining the fabric. For a split second, Fiona froze. Her true self flashed through her eyes. Sharp, furious, violent. Her lips parted, ready to unleash the storm she usually carried with her. Her anger rose instantly, a wave of heat that threatened to break through the soft mask she had spent months perfecting. She clenched her fists under the table. The waiter stuttered. "Apologies. I'm so sorry, ma'am. I didn't mean." Her jaw tightened. "Watch where you're." Stephen touched her arm gently. "It's all right. He didn't mean to. It's just water." His calmness cut through her rage. His tone, soft, rational, reminded her that she wasn't supposed to be the kind of woman who humiliated service workers. She inhaled deeply, forcing the fury back down. The waiter looked terrified. Fiona forced a smile so tight it barely held. "It's fine," she said. "Accidents happen." The relief that washed over the waiter's face was painful for her to witness. He hurried away, apologizing again and again. Stephen watched Fiona quietly, his gaze deep and unreadable. He didn't say anything, but there was a flicker there, a note of curiosity or suspicion or perhaps recognition. He saw something in that split second. The crack in the mask she worked so hard to maintain. He filed it away silently. The rest of the evening flowed smoothly. They continued talking, and though she regained her composure, she knew she had slipped. She could feel it in the air. Something in him had shifted ever so slightly. When the bill came, Stephen reached for it automatically. Fiona pretended to protest, lightly, placing a hand on her purse. "You don't have to," she said softly. "I want to," he replied. She pulled her hand back gracefully. "Thank you." Outside, the moon hung bright above the quiet parking lot, illuminating the soft contours of the night. Stephen walked her to his car, and for the first time, he allowed himself to look at her, not with polite interest, but with something warmer. "I had a good time tonight," he said. She stepped closer, her eyes shining under the moonlight. "I did too." And then, almost hesitantly, he leaned in. She leaned in too, her heart steady, her breath measured. Their lips met in a soft, lingering kiss. The kind meant to be memorable rather than passionate. The moment sealed something between them. When he pulled away, his expression held something she had seen many times from men who believed they had found something precious. "What are you doing to me?" he whispered playfully. She laughed gently. "I could ask you the same." He drove her home. The ride was quiet, filled with glances and soft smiles. When they reached her building, he stepped out to open the door for her. "Good night, Stephen," she said sweetly. "Good night, Fiona." She walked inside with perfect poise. The moment the door shut behind her, her expression hardened. Maya rushed from the living room. "How did it go?" Fiona tossed her purse onto the couch and exhaled triumphantly. "He's falling." Maya clapped softly. "I knew it." Fiona smirked, leaning against the wall. "He has no idea who he's dealing with." But in the quiet darkness of her rooftop bedroom, Fiona replayed the moment she had almost screamed at the waiter. The moment Stephen had watched her with that deep, measuring gaze. It was a small slip, tiny, insignificant. But seasoned hunters knew. Sometimes the smallest noise could alert prey long before the trap closed. And Stephen, he wasn't prey. Not exactly. Not yet. But her control was not as perfect as she believed. And for the first time in a long time, Fiona felt something unfamiliar. Uncertainty. The days that followed their first date unfurled with an almost deceptive smoothness. Fiona played her role flawlessly. The soft-spoken, grounded woman who valued quiet moments over extravagant displays. The woman who listened more than she spoke, who asked thoughtful questions and smiled with gentle sincerity. She sent Stephen messages in the morning, wishing him a peaceful day. And in the evenings, she asked about his work with a level of interest that felt real, even though it wasn't. Stephen responded warmly. But beneath the warmth, his instincts stirred. He had lived long enough to know that beauty could hide a multitude of sins and kindness could be staged like a theater performance. He was not cynical, but he was cautious. He felt drawn to Fiona, but he could not silence the whisper in the back of his mind. The quiet voice that told him to stay alert. Still, he continued seeing her. They met at parks, cafes, small restaurants, and bookshops, always places she suggested. She avoided settings where her temper might be tested. Stephen found that interesting, but he did not push. Not yet. One evening, he invited her to a networking gala, a quiet charity function he attended annually. Fiona hesitated at first. Galas were not places where she could easily control her environment, but rejecting the invitation would seem suspicious, so she accepted, spending hours perfecting her disguise. A simple dress, low heels, minimal jewelry, soft curls that framed her face like a painting of innocence. When Stephen picked her up, he noticed the effort she had made to appear understated. He admired it, or at least he pretended to. He still couldn't shake the sliver of doubt she had planted inside him during that moment at the restaurant when the waiter spilled water, but he pushed it aside. She deserved a chance. The gala hall was filled with people, entrepreneurs, philanthropists, and industry leaders. Stephen led her inside gently, his hand on her back in a relaxed, familiar gesture. The moment they entered, several guests turned to greet him. Some extended warm handshakes, others offered polite nods. Fiona watched carefully, taking mental notes of every name, every title, every possible social advantage. "This is Fiona," Stephen introduced when necessary. "A friend of mine. Friend, not partner, not girlfriend." She smiled graciously, but internally the word stung. She wanted more than that. She needed more than that. A friend was disposable, a girlfriend was a stepping stone, a fiancé was the jackpot, but she recovered quickly and slipped into her role again. Sweet, supportive, non-intrusive, guests liked her. Why wouldn't they? She was doing everything right. But then came the moment she did not anticipate. A woman tripped near the dessert table, dropping a small plate. Glass shattered on the floor. Fiona flinched at the sound, not from fear, but from annoyance, and the expression on her face hardened for half a second. A half second too long. Stephen saw it. He didn't say anything. He didn't frown. He didn't react outwardly, but internally he marked it. Another crack. They moved to a quiet corner later in the evening, sipping sparkling water and talking about travel. Fiona shared a carefully crafted story about a simple beach trip she once took, completely fabricated, and Stephen listened with interest. But midway through her story, a waiter accidentally brushed against her chair while passing. Fiona stiffened, her jaw clenched, her eyes sharpened. Stephen watched very closely, but she caught herself quickly and plastered on her warm smile. "It's all right," she said sweetly, waving off the waiter's apology. Stephen nodded slowly, recognition deepening in his eyes. He didn't challenge her. He simply watched her with a new kind of curiosity, the kind that dissected rather than admired. After 2 hours, he offered to take her home. They walked toward the exit, but something unexpected happened on their way out. A janitor pushing a cleaning cart accidentally rolled too close, almost bumping Fiona's shoe. "Ma'am, sorry," the janitor began. Fiona's mask slipped. She glared. Wasn't loud, wasn't public. But in that pure, unfiltered expression, Stephen saw the truth. Cruelty, impatience, contempt. It lasted less than a second. But Stephen was a man who noticed details. He had lived most of his life studying human behavior, first as a child trying to understand why people betrayed each other, and later as a businessman navigating partnerships built on hidden agendas. This woman had an agenda, he was almost sure of it. But he still wasn't ready to walk away because he needed to understand. When he dropped her off at home, she turned to him with a soft smile, the kind that could convince anyone she was pure and gentle. "Thank you for tonight," she said. "My pleasure," he replied calmly. But the moment she stepped out of the car and closed the door, her smile vanished. She strutted into her building with an expression that resembled something close to irritation. The mask always fell when she thought she was alone. Stephen drove off slowly, processing everything he had seen. Her charm felt rehearsed. Her kindness felt selective. Her reactions felt dangerous. His instincts whispered louder now. Something was wrong. 2 days later, he decided to test his theory. It began with a small, simple observation experiment. He wanted to see how she treated people when she believed no one important was watching. He called a trusted assistant to prepare an old disguise for him, one he hadn't used in years. A wrinkled shirt, worn-out trousers, dusty shoes, age makeup, the disguise of a homeless old man. The same disguise he had worn the day Fiona slapped him on the street. Though she had no idea it was him, he waited until the late afternoon when he knew she would return from a shopping trip. He positioned himself near the entrance of her building, sitting on a crate, holding a small bottle of water and a tattered bag. He didn't have to wait long. Her white SUV pulled up and she stepped out in a glamorous outfit very different from the modest clothing she wore on dates. Diamond earrings, a stylish handbag, heels that clicked against the pavement like punctuation marks. She saw him almost immediately, her face twisted with disgust. He stood slowly, as if trying to greet her or ask for directions. She recoiled. "Get away from my car," she snapped. "What is wrong with you?" he mumbled under his breath, pretending to be confused. She took a step forward, anger igniting. "Leave now. I don't want to see you here again. Do you understand me?" He stayed silent. She stepped closer, her voice low and venomous. "If I see you here tomorrow, I will call the police and have you arrested. You filthy old man." Then she did something Stephen would never forget. She spat at him right in front of her building before storming inside. The door shut behind her with a loud thud. Stephen remained still, not because he was offended, but because he finally understood. There was no misunderstanding about this woman. She wasn't flawed. She wasn't insecure. She wasn't stressed. She was cruel. Genuinely, instinctively cruel. But the moment Fiona disappeared inside, someone else stepped out. A young maid, Chioma, carrying a tray of leftover food wrapped neatly, her eyes wide with sympathy. "Oh, sir," she said softly, kneeling beside him. "I am so sorry. Please don't mind her." Stephen looked up. Her voice was gentle. Her eyes were kind. She set the food beside him carefully. "Here, please eat something. Are you all right? Did she hurt you?" Stephen nodded slowly, touched by her sincerity. "Thank you," he whispered, changing his voice to match the disguise. She almost sat beside him for a moment, unaware of who he truly was. "People like you deserve better than how she treats you," she said sadly. "If she sees me here, she will yell at me, so I must go. But please eat." Then she hurried back inside. Stephen watched her go, realizing something. He had come tonight to expose Fiona. Instead, he had met someone unexpected. Stephen barely slept that night. He sat at the edge of his hotel bed long after midnight. The disguise long removed, the makeup washed away, but the memory of Fiona's cruelty lingering like smoke in the air. He replayed the scene again and again. Her sharp voice, the disdain curling off her lips, the venom behind her eyes. There was no warmth in her, not when she believed she held power, no compassion, no humanity. But what struck him most was not her behavior. It was Chioma. The young maid's kindness had reached him unexpectedly, pure, sincere, almost fragile. The way she had knelt beside him, offering food without hesitation, apologizing for sins she did not commit. It reminded him of something he had lost long ago, something he rarely encountered in the world he lived in. Compassion without expectation, kindness without performance. Chioma had been in the presence of cruelty yet offered humanity. Fiona had been in the presence of weakness yet offered cruelty. The contrast was jarring. Stephen lay back on the bed, slowly staring at the ceiling. For years he had promised himself to guard his heart carefully, to observe rather than fall blindly, to protect himself from manipulation. Tonight he realized something important. His instincts had been right about Fiona. Now he needed answers, real answers, not to satisfy his ego, not to embarrass her, but because he could not turn away from what he had seen. He needed to know who Fiona was when she believed she was unseen. He needed the truth. The next morning, Stephen sat in his office, the city skyline glittering beyond the floor-to-ceiling glass. His assistant Daniel entered quietly, carrying a stack of documents for Stephen's review. "Sir, these are the files for the new development project." "Leave them," Stephen said calmly. Daniel nodded, then hesitated. "Is everything all right, sir? You seem distracted." Stephen folded his hands together on his desk, his expression unreadable. "Daniel, how quickly can you gather background information on someone?" Daniel blinked. He had been with Stephen long enough to recognize the tone, composed but sharp, the tone Stephen used when something mattered to him on a personal level. Immediately, Daniel replied, "Who is the subject?" Stephen paused. For a moment, he considered giving the order. He could uncover every detail of Fiona's past within hours. Her finances, her relationships, her history, every lie, every mask. But something stopped him. Not mercy, not guilt, patience. He didn't want paperwork. He wanted truth from Fiona's own mouth, and from her behavior. "Actually, no," he said quietly. "Not yet," Daniel nodded. "If you need anything, I will let you know." When his assistant left, Stephen retrieved the old disguise from the corner of his office. He folded the clothes carefully, placing them in a leather travel bag. He would wear the disguise again, not out of anger, not to punish, but to understand. If Fiona could truly love someone, She would treat the lowest man with dignity. If Fiona was truly cruel, she would reveal herself again, and Stephen needed to see it for himself. That evening, Fiona prepared for another date, the third one. She hummed to herself as she applied soft makeup, selecting a pastel dress that made her look effortlessly approachable. Maya sat on the bed behind her, watching with crossed legs and a skeptical expression. "You're awfully cheerful today," Mia said. "Why wouldn't I be?" Fiona replied, adjusting her earrings. "Stephen is falling. I can see it. He wants to believe I'm exactly the woman he has been searching for." "And you're sure he suspects nothing?" Fiona scoffed. "He's sweet. He's observant, but not enough to unravel me." Maya raised a brow. "You're getting a bit cocky." Fiona smirked. "Confidence is my strongest weapon. Maid. I just hope he doesn't find out." "He won't," Fiona said sharply. "I know what I'm doing." But just as she spoke, something fluttered inside her chest. A sliver of unease she refused to acknowledge. She had slipped once at the restaurant, another time at the gala. She knew her temper had almost surfaced a few times too many, but she pushed the worry aside. Stephen was kind, trusting, gentle. He didn't have the kind of mind that assumed the worst. Her plan was on course. Tonight would seal it. If she could get him to confess real feelings, she could begin planning the engagement. Maya exhaled softly, watching her. "Just be careful." Fiona snapped her compact shut. "I always am," but she wasn't. Not nearly enough. That same night, Stephen put on the disguise again. He transformed into the frail old man. Gray wig, wrinkled hands, hunched posture. He walked toward Fiona's building as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow across the street. He sat at the same corner where she had spat on him the day before, leaning against the wall with slow, deliberate movements. Minutes later, the building doors opened. Fiona emerged. Her heels clicked rhythmically, her dress swaying softly around her knees. She looked like a goddess, stepping out of a painting, illuminated, elegant, stunning, until she opened her mouth. "Oh no," she groaned when she saw him. "You again?" Stephen remained silent, head bowed, hands trembling slightly to sell the illusion of fragility. "Are you deaf?" she snapped. "I told you to leave this place." He didn't move. She stepped closer, pointing at him with fury. "Listen carefully, old man. I am not in the mood today. Get away from this building before I—" The door behind her opened. Chioma stepped out with a small bag of trash in hand. The moment she saw the scene, she froze. "Ma'am," Chioma said softly. "He isn't harming anyone." "Stay out of this," Fiona hissed. Chioma swallowed and lowered her gaze. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean." "You never mean anything," Fiona snapped. "Just throw the trash and stay in your place." Chioma nodded quickly, her eyes glistening with humiliation. Stephen's heart tightened. This wasn't a one-time pattern. This was who Fiona was. He watched quietly as Chioma hurried away, head down, shoulders tense. When she returned, she paused for a split second, meeting Stephen's disguised eyes. Concern flickered in her expression. "Please go somewhere safer," she whispered. "She is in a terrible mood." Stephen nodded weakly. Fiona scoffed. "This is ridiculous." She stormed to her car, slamming the door harder than necessary. The engine roared to life, and she sped away without a backward glance. Stephen stayed seated as the car disappeared down the street. Only when she was gone did he stand slowly, brushing dust off his worn trousers. Chioma stepped closer, worry etched on her face. "Are you all right, sir?" Stephen nodded again, voice low. "Thank you." She smiled, small, genuine, gentle. "If you ever need food or water, just knock at the side door. I will help you." Stephen felt something strange. Then, a warmth he had not experienced in years. This woman, this quiet maid, had more heart in one breath than Fiona had in her entire presence. Stephen left quietly, his mind already forming conclusions. He now knew the truth that he had seen, who Fiona was beneath the surface. And he had seen Chioma, the unexpected light in the shadows. But one final piece was missing. How far would Fiona go? He needed to know the full extent of the deception, and fate was about to hand him the answer. The next morning, sunlight streamed into Stephen's room like a soft accusation. He had slept poorly, his thoughts tangled in a web of conflicting emotions. Betrayal, disappointment, curiosity, and beneath it all, a steady, analytical calm. He had confirmed Fiona's character. There was no doubt now. Everything he saw when she believed she was unobserved pointed to a heart wrapped in ice and sharpened by entitlement. But there was still one thing he didn't know. Why him? Why had she targeted him so intensely? Why the coincidences, the soft persona, the carefully curated innocence? What did she want besides the obvious? He needed answers. Answers that could only come from her own lips. And fate, it seemed, was eager to deliver. That afternoon, Fiona returned home earlier than expected. She had just finished a spa appointment, her skin glowing, her confidence restored. Tonight she was scheduled to meet Stephen for another date, and she intended to be perfect, gentle, attentive, disarmingly sweet. She stepped out of the elevator onto her floor, humming softly. But as she approached her apartment, she paused. Her door was slightly ajar, her brows knitted in irritation. Chioma must have been cleaning and forgotten to close it properly. Another mistake. Another reason to yell. Fiona pushed the door fully open and stepped inside. "Shh," she barked. No answer. She rolled her eyes and entered the living room where Maya sat casually on the couch, sipping sparkling water and flipping through Fiona's luxury magazines. "You scared me," Fiona said, tossing her purse aside. "I thought someone broke in." "Relax," Maya said, waving a dismissive hand. "Your maid let me in." "Of course she did," Fiona muttered. "She barely thinks before doing anything." Maya raised a brow. "You really need to stop snapping at her. If she quits, you'll spend weeks looking for a replacement." "She won't quit," Fiona said with a smirk. "She needs the job." "My side aid." "You're impossible." "No," Fiona corrected, kicking off her heels. "I'm realistic." She flopped onto the couch beside her friend. "Anyway, Stephen and I are meeting again tonight. I need you to help me plan my outfit." Maya rolled her eyes. "I'm surprised he hasn't asked you to be his girlfriend already." "Oh, he will," Fiona said confidently. "Tonight, maybe. He's been hinting at something serious all week. I just need to do one more charming act, and he'll be fully in love. And then, Fiona said, stretching lazily, we plan the engagement, the wedding, the financial bonding." "Fiona," Maya interrupted carefully. "Don't you think it's time to stop? This game has worked for years, but Stephen, he's different. He's smart. He might notice things." "Notice what?" Fiona snapped, her eyes sharpening. "That I'm pretending to be the sweet, grounded girl he thinks he wants. That I'm shaping myself into his ideal. That's what men want. They want the fantasy. I give it to them, and then I take what I need." Maya looked uneasy. "Still, maybe be careful. You slipped at the restaurant, and at the gala. I handled it." Fiona cut in. "Men like Stephen see what they want to see. He's already blinded by love. He has no idea who I really am." Those words hovered in the air like smoke, and they were being heard by someone she did not know was listening. Stephen stood in the corridor outside Fiona's apartment, disguised once again as the elderly man. He had arrived, hoping to observe her casual behavior towards neighbors or staff, nothing more. But the moment he reached her door, he heard voices. Her voice, and Maya's sharp and unfiltered. The door was just slightly open, not enough to walk in, but enough for sound to slip out clearly. He froze. Then slowly, carefully, he leaned against the wall, ensuring his shadow did not fall through the doorway. He listened. "Stephen is easy," Fiona continued, her tone dripping with arrogance. "I even tracked his flight schedule months before we accidentally met. Maya, I practically scripted everything. He thinks we met by chance. Isn't that adorable?" Stephen's pulse slowed, his breath steadied, every word cut with the precision of a blade. "He likes simple women," Fiona went on, "women who don't care about money or status. So, I became exactly that for him. I go to cheap cafes, dress in plain clothes, read his favorite books, pretend to be shy. It's pathetic, really." Maya groaned softly. "Fiona, you're going too far." "Too far?" Fiona scoffed. "Please, this man is worth billions. If I marry him, I never have to work another day. And if we get divorced later, I will leave with enough money to fund every luxury I've ever wanted." Maya rubbed her temples. "What about him? What if he actually loves you?" Fiona laughed, the ugliest sound Stephen had ever heard from her. "Love. Maya, Men don't love, they get attached. And I know exactly how to make them attach. Stephen closed his eyes. For a brief moment, pain rippled through him. Not heartbreak, but a cold ache of recognition. This was not the first time someone had pretended to love a wealthy man for financial gain. His father had died because of a betrayal like this. But Stephen was not a boy anymore. That he was not helpless, and he would not be fooled twice. Inside the apartment, Fiona kept speaking. Besides, she added, I know how to keep him hooked. A soft smile, a gentle touch, a carefully planned vulnerability. He won't even see it coming. Stephen opened his eyes slowly. He had heard enough. He turned away from the door, his heart steady, his thoughts crisp. There was no anger in him. Surprisingly, no desire for vengeance. What filled him instead was clarity. The quiet, powerful clarity of a man who had confirmed the truth with his own ears. Fiona was exactly who he feared she was. A masterpiece of manipulation, a danger wrapped in beauty, a hollow heart covered in diamonds, and now her time was up. Inside the apartment, Maya finally stood and grabbed her bag. Fiona, I really think you should slow down. I told you. Fiona snapped. Everything is under control. Maya hesitated. And what about that old man you keep yelling at outside? You're going to get in trouble if someone records you. Fiona dismissed the concern with a wave. He's harmless. Just some pathetic beggar trying to loiter near my building. If he stays one more day, I'll have the security drag him out. Maya sighed. You need to be careful. Fiona smirked. Maya, I always win. But tonight she wouldn't, because the old man she spat on, the old man she threatened, the old man she despised, was walking away with every secret she tried to hide, and he was done observing. Now he would act. As Stephen reached the sidewalk, he removed the wig, the glasses, the aged posture. He straightened slowly, revealing the man beneath the disguise. Calm, composed, powerful. He looked up at Fiona's building one last time. No more masks, he murmured. For either of us, his decision was made. He would not expose her quietly, that he would not simply vanish from her life, that he would not allow her to charm another man the way she tried to charm him. He would show her truth to herself, to him, and to the world. And when he did, nothing in her perfect world would remain standing. The evening air was cool, almost cleansing, as Stephen stepped out of his car in front of a private event hall he had reserved for the night. Tall white columns framed the entrance, illuminated by soft golden lights. Inside, staff moved gracefully, setting up floral arrangements and arranging tables for an event he had decided on only hours earlier, the engagement party. But it was not an engagement celebration, not in the way Fiona imagined. It was a revelation, a reckoning, a stage where truth would stand naked under the lights. Stephen walked inside, hands behind his back, and surveyed the room calmly. The decor team had followed his instructions precisely. Elegant white drapery, soft lighting, understated decor. Nothing extravagant, everything dignified. There would be cameras, there would be witnesses, there would be truth. And Fiona, she would come fully convinced tonight was the night she would secure her future. He had considered simply walking away, disappearing, ending things in private. But this was not just about him. Fiona had left a trail of broken hearts, destroyed marriages, and manipulated men. Silence would let her hunt again. He would not allow that. His assistant, Daniel, approached him with a tablet. Sir, invitations have gone out. All the important guests have confirmed. Investors, public figures, media personalities, even a few of her friends. Stephen nodded. Good. Daniel hesitated. Are you sure you want to do this so publicly? Stephen's expression remained calm. The truth needs witnesses, Daniel swallowed. What if she reacts unpredictably? She will, Stephen said quietly. But the truth must be seen. Daniel bowed his head. Understood. Meanwhile, across the city, Fiona stood in front of her mirror, admiring the reflection staring back at her. Her dress was a shimmering silver, hugging her body with sleek elegance. Her hair cascaded in soft waves down her back, her makeup a flawless blend of subtle and striking. She looked every bit the future wife of a billionaire. Maya watched silently from the edge of the bed. You look incredible, she said softly. I know, Fiona replied, turning slightly to admire her silhouette. Tonight is the night. Maya hesitated. Are you sure? What if? What if? What? Fiona snapped, irritation spiking. He loves me. I saw it in his eyes. The small kindnesses. The way he listens. The way he holds my hand. He is gone already. Completely gone. I just need one push. And if he finds out your plan, Fiona's expression hardened. He won't. Stephen is too gentle, too trusting. Honestly, sometimes I wonder how he even became a billionaire with how naive he can be. Maya's discomfort grew. Maybe you're underestimating him. I never underestimate men, Fiona said coldly. They are the simplest creatures on earth. Maya fell silent. Fiona turned away from the mirror and reached for her sparkling clutch. Let's go. I can't keep my future husband waiting. Her voice was dripping with excitement. Blind, confident excitement, but it wouldn't last. Stephen arrived early at the event hall. He stood at the far end of the room, hands in his pockets, looking out over the space that would soon hold the moment Fiona's life turned upside down. There was no triumph in his expression, no satisfaction, just quiet resolve. Guests began arriving, familiar faces, industry colleagues, associates, camera-worthy personalities. They greeted Stephen with warmth, congratulating him in advance. We heard the rumors. She's a lovely girl, Stephen. Congratulations on finally settling down. We can't wait to meet her. Stephen smiled politely, but inside his thoughts stayed steady and cold. Then the main doors opened. Fiona entered. If beauty had a throne, she could have sat on it. Her dress shimmered with each step, catching the light like stardust. Her smile was bright, dazzling, the carefully constructed smile she always used when she needed to charm a room. The guests turned, their murmurs rising like a soft wave. There she is. She's stunning. That dress, she's perfect for him. Fiona soaked in the admiration like sunlight, but her eyes were fixed on one person, Stephen. He stood near the stage, his face unreadable, his posture controlled. She lifted her chin and glided toward him, heart swelling with victory. Tonight was her triumph. She imagined the speech he would give, glowing words about love and destiny. She imagined the ring, a massive stone, rare and blinding. She imagined her future, luxurious, secure, unchallenged. Stephen, she said softly, stopping before him. Fiona, he replied calmly. You seem serious tonight, she said with a playful smile. Is everything all right? His gaze lingered on her face. Everything is exactly as it needs to be. Before she could respond, he offered his arm. Shall we begin? Her heart soared. Yes. He led her gently toward the center stage, the raised platform surrounded by white petals and pearlescent lighting. The crowd gathered, phones raised, murmurs thick with anticipation. Oh my, someone whispered. He's going to propose. This is beautiful. Fiona's heart raced. Her palms tingled. She rehearsed her reaction. A gasp, a hand over her chest, maybe even a few tears for effect, but then Stephen stepped away from her. Just a single step, but enough. Confusion flickered across her face. Stephen, he turned to the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, his voice calm, steady, controlled. Thank you for joining me tonight. Silence fell over the room. Fiona's smile stayed frozen in place. Stephen continued. Tonight, I wanted you all to witness something important. Not a celebration, but a revelation. A ripple of confusion passed through the guests. Fiona blinked. Her heartbeat stumbled. Stephen, she whispered. He did not look at her. Not yet. Many of you know me as a man who values transparency and integrity. I believe that a person's character reveals itself not in public, but in private. Not when they are watched, but when they think no one is watching. Fiona's stomach tightened. Stephen's eyes finally turned to her, and the woman standing next to me has shown me exactly who she is. The room inhaled sharply. Fiona's heart crashed against her ribs. What are you doing? She hissed through clenched teeth, her smile glued in place for the audience. Stephen didn't answer her. Instead, he took a slow, deliberate step away from her and raised a hand toward the entrance. The doors opened, and an old man walked in, slow, frail, hunched. The man Fiona had spat on, threatened, humiliated. Her entire body went cold. Guests gasped softly. Oh no, is that a homeless man? What is happening? Fiona's chest tightened, breath caught in her throat. What is he doing here? She snapped under her breath. Stephen turned to her fully now, voice razor sharp in its calm. That man, he said softly, Is me. Silence. Complete. Crushing. Fiona's blood drained from her face. What? She whispered. The old man reached the stage. Stephen bent slightly, took the wig off the man's head, revealing the truth beneath it. Gasps filled the hall. Murmurs exploded. Cameras clicked like small explosions. Fiona's hands trembled violently. No. No, Stephen. He raised a hand. Do not speak. Her lips snapped shut. Stephen faced the audience again. For weeks, I disguised myself to see who Fiona truly was, to see how she treats those she believes are beneath her. And what I discovered, he paused, letting the weight of silence sink in, was heartbreaking. Fiona shook her head frantically. Stephen, please. He turned back to her. You slapped me. You spat on me. You humiliated me and you threatened me. People gasped. Several guests stepped backward, whispering intensely. And while treating me with such cruelty, Stephen continued, you played the perfect woman for the version of me you wanted to marry. Fiona's legs wobbled. I can explain. You cannot, Stephen said quietly, because the truth speaks louder than your words ever could. He stepped aside. Fiona targeted me. She studied my life, orchestrated our meeting, and planned to manipulate her way into marriage for financial gain. Fiona fell to her knees. Stephen, please. I'm sorry. But Stephen shook his head. I did not bring you here to hurt you, he said, only to reveal the truth. He turned to the audience, and in my disguise I met someone unexpected. All eyes followed his gaze toward the corner of the hall, toward the young maid standing frozen near the exit. Chioma, invited by Stephen earlier that day, though she didn't understand why. Fiona's eyes widened in horror. No, she whispered. No. Stephen walked toward Chioma, each step soft but resolute. She almost stared at him, breath shaking, unable to understand what was happening. Stephen knelt before her, a billionaire kneeling before a maid, and the entire hall erupted into stunned silence. Ch, he said softly. You showed kindness when you had nothing to gain. You showed compassion to someone you thought was a stranger. You saw a human being, not a burden. Guy's eyes filled with tears. Fiona watched, broken, shaking. Stephen reached into his pocket and pulled out the ring. The same ring Fiona believed belonged to her future. Will you marry me? He asked quietly. Chioma's hands flew to her mouth. Sir, I don't. Call me Stephen, he said gently. And you don't have to answer with fear. Just answer with your heart. Chioma trembled, overwhelmed, stunned, unprepared. Then she whispered, yes. The hall exploded in applause. Some cheered, some cried, some simply stared in disbelief. Fiona collapsed completely, sobbing on the floor, her dreams dissolving into dust around her. Stephen stood, took Chioma's hand, and faced the crowd, calm, unbothered, deeply at peace. The truth had finally been spoken, and Fiona's world had finally shattered. The engagement hall emptied slowly, like a wave receding after a violent crash. Guests whispered as they left, their voices echoing faint judgments and disbelief. Some shook their heads, some muttered about karma, others simply stared at Fiona in stunned silence. Unwilling to approach the shattered woman kneeling at the center of the room, Fiona didn't look up. Her knees pressed into the cold marble floor. Her hands shook uncontrollably. Her breath came in shallow, panicked gasps. It felt as if the earth had been ripped from under her feet, leaving her suspended in a free fall with no end in sight. She had always been in control. She had always been the puppeteer. She had always been the one who pulled strings and watched others dance. But now she was the one on the ground, exposed, humiliated, destroyed. Her silver dress shimmered under the lights, mocking her with its beauty, a crown on a queen who had lost her throne. Maya rushed to her side at last, crouching beside her. The moment Maya touched her shoulder, Fiona jerked away violently. Don't touch me, she choked out. Fiona, please, Maya whispered. Let's get you up. Fiona slowly lifted her head. Her eyes were swollen, streaked with mascara. Her face was twisted in despair, so raw it was almost painful to look at. He used me, she sobbed. No, Maya said gently. You did this to yourself. Fiona stared at her friend as if struck. Maya lowered her gaze. You went too far. You always do. I warned you. Stop, Fiona screamed, tears spilling. Just stop. Don't pretend you didn't enjoy the benefits. Don't pretend you didn't help me. We did this together. Maya's lips parted, but she said nothing, because they both knew Fiona wasn't entirely wrong. Maya had played a part in the schemes. She had watched Fiona manipulate men like chess pieces. She had helped. She had enabled. But Maya never intended for it to go this far. Never intended for Fiona to target someone like Stephen, someone perceptive, someone cautious, someone wounded and watchful. Please, Maya whispered, let me take you home. But Fiona shook her head violently. No, not yet. She lifted trembling hands to her face and wiped her tears with shaky fingers. Her chest rose and fell like thunder beneath her dress. She turned, searching the hall like a wounded predator. Stephen was gone. Chioma was gone. The applause was gone. The whispers remained. Fiona stood slowly, her legs weak, her dignity shattered. And yet, somewhere deep within her, a spark flickered, a spark of rage. Outside, Stephen escorted Chioma into the limousine, waiting for them. She was still trembling, barely processing what had happened. She sat in the plush seat, hands clasped tightly together, eyes wide and unsure. Stephen, she whispered, I don't understand any of this. Stephen sat across from her, his expression softer than it had been in years. You're overwhelmed, he said gently. It's all right, but why? Why me? She asked. I'm just a maid. You're not just anything, Stephen replied. You showed kindness when no one else did. You saw a stranger in distress and you cared. No audience, no reward. That kind of heart is rare. G swallowed nervously, tears pooling. But marriage, she whispered. That's a big step. I don't want you to make decisions out of anger or pity. Stephen leaned forward slightly, his gaze steady. I'm not angry, he said. And I don't pity you. I see who you are. I saw who she was. And I know what I'm choosing. Chioma pressed a hand to her chest. This is too much, too fast. People will talk. They always do, Stephen said softly. But they don't know us. She looked at him with disbelief, awe, and fear all tangled together. Stephen, I need time, she said gently. I won't take back my yes. I meant it. But I need time to understand. Stephen nodded slowly. Then time is what you'll have. He reached forward and took her hand carefully, not possessively, not boldly, but with the quiet respect of a man offering trust, not claiming it. Chioma exhaled shakily. The limousine drove away from the event hall, carrying two people stitched together by truth rather than deception. Back in the nearly empty hall, Fiona's breathing steadied enough for her to speak. I need to talk to him, she whispered. Mia's eyes widened. Fiona, no, I have to explain, Fiona said. He misunderstood everything. I can fix this. Maya grabbed her wrists firmly. No, you can't, Fiona. It's over. He exposed your lies in front of the city. He proposed to someone else. There is nothing to fix. Fiona stared at her, unblinking. No, I can fix this. Her voice held an eerie calm, the calm before a storm. You don't understand, she said softly. Men have left before, but he made me believe I was winning. He made me believe I was in control because you manipulated him, Maya said. Fiona shook her head violently. No. I was meant to win this one. He was supposed to be mine, my future, my stability, my life. Her breath grew wilder and she took him. Fiona hissed. My maid! My maid! Mia felt a chill run through her. This isn't about Stephen anymore, Maya said carefully. This is about your pride. Fiona's eyes snapped toward her, cold as steel. You think I care about pride? Fiona spat. I care about survival. Do you know how much I invested in this? Do you know how many months I spent studying every detail of his life? Everything was calculated. Perfect. Her voice broke and he chose her. She laughed. A sharp, broken sound. He kneeled for her for a maid. She laughed again, louder, almost hysterical. Maya reached out terrified. Fiona, stop. You're scaring me. Fiona wiped her tears with the back of her hand, smearing her makeup. You think I'm done? She whispered, her voice dark and trembling. You think I'm going to walk away and let this be the story that I lost to a maid? Fiona? No, Fiona whispered. I will not be the villain in their fairy tale. She took a step toward the exit, her expression shifting into something dangerous, something determined, something feral. I'll talk to him, she said with a cold smile. He owes me that much. Fiona, please, Maya begged, grabbing her arm. Don't do anything reckless. Fiona pulled free, her voice a quiet blade. I'm not doing anything reckless. I'm taking back what's mine. Then she left the hall with a deliberate, chilling calm. Her silver dress shimmered behind her like moonlight on a blade. Stephen and Chioma arrived at a luxurious home. Not Stephen's main residence, but a quiet estate reserved for privacy. He led her inside gently. Stay here tonight, he said. Not because you are obligated, but because you need space, safety, and peace. Chioma nodded slowly. Thank you. Stephen smiled faintly. Rest. Tomorrow we talk. She entered the guest room, overwhelmed, grateful, terrified, hopeful, all at once. Stephen stepped into the hallway, closing the door behind him gently. And for the first time in a long time, he felt a strange, unexpected softness bloom inside him. But before that softness could settle, his phone vibrated. A message appeared on the screen from Fiona. A single sentence. We need to talk. You owe me that much. Stephen exhaled slowly. He knew this wasn't over. The storm wasn't done. Not yet. Because Fiona Ederon, beautiful, ruthless, wounded Fiona, was coming back. And the next encounter would not be calm. The morning sun rose quietly over Stephen's private estate, casting soft golden light across the manicured gardens and white stone pathways. Birds chirped gently. The fountain in the courtyard bubbled with peaceful rhythm. Everything about the property radiated calm, but inside the mansion there was unease. Stephen had barely slept. He sat in his study, fingers steepled, eyes fixed on the message he had received from Fiona the night before. We need to talk. You owe me that much. He knew Fiona well enough to understand the sharp edges buried in those words. She was wounded, humiliated, furious, and people like her did not crumble quietly. They fought, they clawed, they burned everything around them. He had expected a confrontation, a verbal one, perhaps a dramatic outburst, accusations thrown, tears shed, but nothing prepared him for the storm that was already forming beyond his gate. Chioma in the guest room woke early and stepped to the window. She looked out at the quiet estate, her heart heavy with mixed emotions, uncertainty, gratitude, fear. The engagement had happened only hours ago, and though she had said yes, she could hardly process the enormity of it. She touched the window frame lightly. What now? She whispered. But there was no time to answer that question because at that very moment, Fiona arrived. The mansion gate rattled violently as a car screeched to a stop. A sleek black vehicle, one of Fiona's many, slammed against the brakes so hard that the tires burned a line across the pavement. The two security guards at the gate straightened immediately. A woman stepped out. Not the composed, glamorous Fiona they had seen in tabloids, always dressed in diamonds and power. This Fiona was different. Her hair was disheveled, her eyes were swollen and red, her clothes were wrinkled from a night of no sleep, and something darker simmered behind her expression. A kind of desperation that smelled like danger. One of the guards stepped forward cautiously. Ma'am, you can't enter without. Fiona raised a gun. A black, cold, trembling gun. The guard froze. Open the gate, she said, her voice low, fractured, shaking with rage and grief. Open it now. The guard hesitated, hands up. Ma'am, please, now, she screamed, waving the weapon. The second guard quickly hit the emergency alarm button, silent to the outside, audible, only inside the mansion. Then under the threat of the gun, they opened the gate. Fiona stormed inside. Her steps were erratic, her breathing ragged. She clutched the gun so tightly her knuckles turned white. Her mind replayed the humiliation again and again. The engagement hall, the gasps, the whispers, the look of disgust on strangers' faces. It looped like a nightmare that refused to fade. But the worst image was Stephen kneeling before Chioma, taught her. The maid, the girl who bowed when she spoke, the girl who didn't belong in a mansion, much less next to a billionaire. Fiona's chest tightened painfully. He chose her, she whispered to herself. He chose her over me? She pushed open the front door without knocking. Inside, the alarm triggered a security protocol. Stephen stood immediately, his heart dropping. Daniel, his assistant, rushed into the room. Sir, someone forced through the gate. Stephen's expression sharpened. Who? It's Fiona. Stephen inhaled once, slow and steady. Where is she now? At the entrance hall. And sir, she has a gun. Stephen didn't waste another second. "Secure Chioma," he commanded, "and send the detail to intercept Fiona. No lethality, only disarm." "Yes, sir." But he already knew this confrontation was unavoidable. Chioma had just stepped into the hallway when she heard hurried footsteps behind her. "Miss," a guard called, "you need to step back, please." Now, before she could ask why, a scream echoed through the mansion, a scream that didn't sound human anymore. "Where is she?" Guy froze. That voice, that fury, that was Fiona. Two guards positioned themselves in front of Chioma, shielding her. "Take me to her," Fiona shouted from the foyer as she stormed deeper inside the house. "Take me to the girl who stole my life." Guy's heart raced. "Stephen!" she whispered, terrified. The moment Fiona saw the guards in the corridor, she lifted the gun and pointed it at them. "Move!" she hissed. "I'm not asking twice." "Fiona," Stephen called from behind her. She whirled around breathless, shaking, eyes brimming with unshed tears. When she saw him, something inside her broke further. "Why?" she breathed. "Why did you do that to me? Why did you humiliate me in front of everyone?" Stephen stood a safe distance away, hands visible and calm. "Put the gun down." "No," she said. "Not until she pays for what she took." "She didn't take anything," Stephen replied softly. "You lost what you never truly had." Her face twisted. "Don't talk to me like I'm nothing," she screamed. "I loved you." Stephen's expression did not change. "You loved what I had." "That's a lie," she sobbed. "You were my future. You were my chance to finally win." "Win what?" Stephen asked quietly. Fiona trembled. He stepped forward slowly, too slowly for her liking, and she raised the gun again, this time with a shaking hand pointed toward his chest. "Don't come any closer." "Then put the gun down," Stephen repeated gently, eyes locked on hers. "This isn't you," she laughed. A bitter, hysterical laugh. "This is exactly me." And then she heard it, a gasp from behind the guards. Fiona saw her small, frightened, standing behind two security officers, and Fiona's world narrowed to a single point dot, a single heartbeat dot, a single target. "There you are," she whispered. Chioma stepped back instinctively. Fiona raised the gun. Time seemed to slow. A scream escaped Chioma's lips. Stephen lunged forward. The guards moved, but Fiona's finger tightened around the trigger, and a single gunshot exploded through the mansion. But the shot did not come from Fiona's gun. Came from behind Stephen, from the head of security. A controlled, precise, non-lethal shot fired straight into Fiona's hand. Her gun clattered to the floor. Fiona screamed, a raw, agonizing cry. Blood dripped from her injured hand. She fell to her knees, clutching it, gun secure. The security detail barked as two men rushed to restrain her. Stephen exhaled hard, turning immediately to Chioma, who stood trembling behind the guards. "Are you hurt?" he asked, moving to her side. She shook violently, and no, just frightened. He placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "It's over." "No!" Fiona screamed from the floor, struggling against the guards. "This isn't over. You can't take everything from me. Not her. Not my future. Your future was built on lies," Stephen said calmly. "You owe me," she cried. Stephen met her gaze, and for the first time his voice was still. "I owe you nothing," Fiona broke. She collapsed fully, sobbing into the floor, her entire body shaking with despair, pain, and fury. The ambulance arrived within minutes. She was handcuffed gently but securely, her wounded hand wrapped in sterile bandages. She screamed, cursed, begged in cycles as paramedics loaded her onto the stretcher. Stephen stood in the doorway, Chioma clinging to him, eyes wide and tear-filled as Fiona was lifted into the ambulance. She looked at Stephen with shattered eyes. "Please," she whispered, "don't let them take everything." He didn't answer. She was driven away. It took 3 months for the case to move through the legal system. 3 months of psychiatric evaluations, 3 months of witness testimonies, 3 months of courtroom trials where every detail of her scheme surfaced. And in the end, Fiona Aderan, the beauty, the manipulator, the woman who built empires of lies, was sentenced to life imprisonment for attempted murder, armed intrusion, and multiple counts of fraud revealed during the investigation. The court's gavel fell. Her fate was sealed. The Queen of Deception would spend the rest of her life behind bars. The world had moved on from the scandal, but the memory lingered in headlines, interviews, and quiet conversations. Stephen had stepped out of the spotlight, refusing to give interviews or fan the flames. Chioma avoided attention completely, choosing silence and humility over retelling trauma. The case faded, the noise faded, and in the space left behind, something beautiful began to grow. In the months following Fiona's sentencing, the mansion transformed. The tension that once filled the halls dissolved. Laughter became common. Soft piano melodies drifted down the staircase in the evenings when Stephen played to calm his thoughts. She almost spent quiet mornings tending the garden, a habit she had always loved, but never had time or freedom to enjoy. Sometimes Stephen would watch her from his study window. The gentle sway of her dress, her bare hands brushing against roses and highs, sunlight warming her hair, there was something profoundly grounding about her presence. She did not demand, she did not expect. She simply was a calming force he never knew he needed. Their relationship developed slowly, gently, not rushed by spectacle, not built on fantasies, not staged for the world. It grew in subtle moments. The time Stephen found Chioma asleep on the couch after reading too late. The time he taught her how to play a simple piano melody. The breakfast they shared, not because of obligation, but because they genuinely enjoyed talking. The evenings they spent walking through the garden, quiet but deeply connected. Stephen learned her favorite tea. Chioma learned the way he preferred his books arranged. They discovered each other with curiosity instead of performance. By the 4th month, love had become an unspoken truth between them. Gentle, honest, and deep. The first proposal had been dramatic, shocking, emotional, a moment born from chaos. But Stephen wanted to give her something new, something calm, something intimate, something she could remember without fear. So one evening, just as the sun dipped beneath the horizon, he led her into the garden. The fountain glowed with golden lights. Fireflies floated around them like tiny stars. A soft violin melody played from a distance, arranged secretly by Stephen. Chioma clasped her hands nervously. "What is all this?" she whispered. Stephen took her hand gently. "You said yes to me on a night filled with noise and chaos. You said yes while fear tangled with hope. I want you to have a moment that belongs only to peace." Her eyes softened. He knelt slowly, not in front of a crowd, not under bright lights, but beneath the gentle sky, surrounded only by nature and sincerity. "Chioma," he said, "I loved your kindness before I knew your name. I loved your heart before I knew your story. I want to build a life with you, not because of what happened, but because of who you are. Will you marry me properly this time?" Tears fell freely down her cheeks. "Yes," she whispered 1,000 times. "Yes." Stephen stood and wrapped his arms around her. She buried her face in his chest, her heart racing with joy. For once in her life, Chioma felt chosen, not out of pity, not out of obligation, but out of love. 12 months after their first meeting, the world witnessed something extraordinary. A wedding that would be remembered for decades, not for extravagance alone, but for the story behind it. The ceremony took place on the grounds of Stephen's largest estate, a sprawling property overlooking the ocean. The aisles stretched between rows of towering white roses, silk drapery flowed from archways, crystal chandeliers hung from an open-air canopy, catching sunlight and scattering it like diamonds. Journalists, celebrities, business magnates, and dignitaries filled the guest list, not because Stephen sought attention, but because the world could not ignore a love story formed from truth and courage. But the center of it all was Chioma. She stepped into the ceremony in a breathtaking gown of ivory silk, the delicate lace shimmering as she walked. Her hair was pinned elegantly, adorned with pearls and soft curls. She carried a bouquet of white highs, simple, beautiful, authentic, much like herself. Guests gasped softly as she passed. "She looks like an angel. Unbelievable grace. A true queen." But Chioma heard none of it. Her eyes were fixed on one person only, Stephen, standing at the altar in a tailored white suit, his expression softening the moment he saw her. Stephen's breath caught in his throat. For a man who had seen the world, survived heartbreak, and guarded his heart for years, this moment felt unreal. Chioma reached him and he took her hands gently. "You're beautiful," he whispered. "You look like a dream," she replied. The officiant began the ceremony as the ocean breeze carried their vows into the horizon. Stephen spoke first. "Kate, you taught me that love does not come from perfection, comes from truth. I vow to protect your heart, cherish your soul, and honor you with the same kindness you offered me when I were nothing but rags." Chioma nearly broke into tears. Then she spoke. "Stephen, you saw me when the world never did. You lifted me from shadows and placed me where I could shine. I vow to love you with honesty, to support you in all things, and to be the partner you deserve for the rest of our lives." The officiant smiled warmly. "I now pronounce you husband and wife." Stephen kissed her, slow, gentle, reverent. As the crowd erupted in applause, the sky erupted too. White doves soared. Fireworks blossomed across the horizon. Rose petals rained from above, drifting over them like blessings. Chioma laughed with pure joy as Stephen lifted her into his arms. The world watched. The world celebrated. The world believed in love again. The reception was a glittering celebration. Music, dancing, light, and laughter. Stephen held Chioma close on the dance floor, moving slowly as though the rest of the world had disappeared. Even after the music softened and the guests began to leave, neither of them wanted the night to end. Later, they stood together on the balcony overlooking the ocean. Chioma leaned into him, watching the moonlight move across the water. "Do you think all of this is real?" she whispered. Stephen turned toward her and gently brushed a curl away from her face. "It is real," he said. "And it belongs to us." Chioma smiled as he kissed her forehead. From that night forward, they built a life based on peace, honesty, and partnership. There were no masks between them, no games, and no fear of being truly known. Chioma returned to school to study interior design, a dream she had once believed was beyond her reach. Stephen supported her through every difficult class, every moment of doubt, and every success. Years later, she opened her own design company, built on integrity, compassion, and elegance. Stephen remained beside her through every milestone. Together, they raised children in a home filled with laughter, patience, and love. He never treated her like the maid she had once been, and she never loved him because of his wealth. They chose each other for the truth they found beneath every title and every wound. Each morning, Stephen woke beside the woman who had shown him that a pure heart could still exist after betrayal and loss. Each morning, Chioma woke beside the man who had recognized her worth when she could no longer see it herself. Their story was never simply about a billionaire falling in love with a maid. It was about truth defeating deception, kindness overcoming cruelty, and two wounded people finding the courage to trust again. They did not live happily because life became perfect. They lived happily because, no matter what came, they faced it together.